The idea behind the show is simply asking guests what they would tell a stranger on a plane if they were sitting next to them and the stranger asked them for advice.
The scenery is passing very fast, but the seer is constant. The one who's seeing is the same.
Let me appreciate you for asking a question that I haven't been asked after 2,500 or so interviews over the years.
Is you have to drop the ego, which is everyone's greatest obstacle.
In 2008, Grant and I had been married for 4 years. I was pregnant with my first child. The economy was collapsing, and we were on the verge of losing everything financially.
So excited to be here with Amanda Quick as part of our bootcamp this weekend, and also now on our Enlightened Passenger show. And so, Amanda, I'm going to jump right in now. With this show, we have such a short amount of time that I jump in with deep questions really quick. So in advance, I apologize for that. But I'm going to ask you a question about legacy. So obviously a really big word, but what does the idea of legacy mean to you?
Of legacy means to me what we're leaving as our blueprint, as our mark in the world. And it can look like many different things. We have, those of us who are parents have children that become part of our legacy. We have our work that lives on. The mark that we really want to make and the impact to the planet is ultimately the legacy we leave behind.
And as a follow-up to that, for you, do you think that legacy, and because I, for context point of view, I hear different answers all the time. To you, is legacy something that we intentionally create, or is legacy something that you just live the way you're going to live and it happens for you or to you?
It's going to depend on the person, because on some level, there are people who don't intentionally create much of anything in their lives. That doesn't mean they don't leave a legacy. It doesn't mean they don't have children who go on to impact other people. It doesn't mean even being kind to your neighbor doesn't leave a legacy or a mark on the planet. But those of us who are inspired to go do more in the world and intentionally create a more lasting legacy, a bigger mission, perhaps, are more likely to, have both at the same time. And I think the choice is up to the person on what's important to them.
So another question that this is one here's a more frequent question I ask, but I call it the time machine question. A lot of people, I've kind of coined this, I think, but it's very simply what it sounds like. Basically, if you could jump into a time machine and go back and talk to a younger version of yourself and give her some life advice based on what you've learned in the years since, what do you think you might tell a younger Amanda?
Oh, man. A younger Amanda was super stubborn, wouldn't listen to anybody but herself, always thought she was right about everything. And I had decided that I knew who I was and everything about the world. And I was very, very naive, let's say. I wasn't necessarily wrong about everything, but I was very naive in who I thought the world was and my place in it. And if I were to go back knowing who I was at the time and very rarely took advice from other people, I would really focus on talking to that younger self about listening better to me. Because while I listened to my mind and I listened to the things that my mind told me and the logic, I ignored my body. I ignored the intuition. I ignored my emotions because they didn't make logical sense. I would get these niggles about things not being right. And I'd be like, no, that doesn't make sense. And I would ignore it. And I would really encourage a younger version of me to listen to all of me, to befriend all of me, to love all of me, and to actually recognize that my body is not wrong. The intuition isn't wrong. I just maybe don't have the mind information yet. And so I think that when we allow ourselves to embody all of ourselves and listen to all of ourselves, we actually get more information. And I would have saved myself a whole lot of heartache and a whole lot of trauma had I actually been willing to listen to my body.
Wow, I love that so much. My last question, and as I mentioned, it's the one question that I always ask. It's the official question that kind of this whole show has been coined around, is the passenger question. So it's literally, a lot of people I'm sure think it's very similar to the question I just asked you, but the difference is it's around a stranger versus what you tell yourself. So the question is this: if you were on a plane, Amanda, sitting next to a stranger, they leaned over and said, I need some life advice. What do you got? What would you tell the stranger on a plane?
I've actually said this multiple times. If I could give one gift to the world, if I could sprinkle pixie dust and give one gift to everybody on the planet, I would love to give the gift of trusting themselves. I would love to give people the gift of really believing themselves and trusting their hearts and and trusting that they know what's best for them. And, we're so conditioned with society, and we're so supposed to's and should and have to's and all of these things, that we believe in what success is going to look like. We believe this is what we have to achieve in order to be accepted and worth something in society. And so, if I was to meet a total stranger who really needed support and help, it would always redirect back to them. Like, what is true for you? What is important to you? And why don't you trust yourself? Where have you abandoned yourself? Because ultimately, the only person who can actually abandon us is ourselves. And everybody who feels abandoned by the world is usually because they've ignored themselves and they haven't trusted their own actions and what they need to do. And so to me, that stranger really needs to be reminded that they have their own answers and their inner knowing is true for them, no matter what that looks like. And we have lessons and learnings that we go on adventures to, and sometimes isn't super comfortable, but ultimately it's to learn something so that we can better ourselves and become more and follow our own hearts.
Amazing. And so, Amanda, I said that was the last official question. Obviously, the unofficial question is simply, how can we learn more? So if people want to connect with you, obviously we'll include it in, as we say in the podcasting world, the show notes, even though I don't know that listeners use that same terminology and we say it all the time, but I'll include it in the show notes, the description, et cetera, et cetera. But where can people learn more about who you are and what you do?
Yes. So I have a couple of methods. I just released my personal memoir, which is my biggest trauma, deepest, darkest thing in my life, out into the world about a month ago. I am the #1 best-selling author of The Sex Trafficker's Wife. And so you may go to thesextraffickerswife.com to get information about that book. I also have a healing and coaching business that is amandaquickhealing.com. And I am on TikTok and Facebook at both Amanda Quick Healing and The Sex Trafficker's Wife.
So for the next time,
yes.
I'll call it I'll have to bring you on my long form show, but for the next time we need to explore that book.
Yes, I know I dropped that at the end, but there wasn't an opportunity. So
well, and it sounds like, it would be obviously a pretty powerful read. So we'll make that for the next time. But the cool part is we probably intrigued enough people to go, I need to figure out what this book is about. So thank you so much, Amanda. So appreciate you doing this, and so cool to do it live with an audience. Most of our episodes are pre-recorded without an audience. So cool to do it live with an audience. Thank you so much for joining us on this. And I'll call it, with your permission again, a to be continued.